Good afternoon, everyone. And we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks for joining. We very much appreciate you taking the time out of your day to spend some time with us to just kind of get an update on where we stand with our vaccination requirement. I do have one paid service announcement that I'd like to just, make you aware of. Today is the Marine Corps birthday. Yep. 246 years. Glory to the Corps. Um, it's something that we always celebrate. So it's a big day in the house here. Before we get started, I just want to turn it over to Joanne for any opening remarks, and then we'll jump into the meat of the presentation. Joanne, over to you.
Great. Thanks, Gerald. And a great reminder for what today is. Certainly a milestone for our military, and as you, so proud of your service as a Marine. So hello, everyone. And so not only thank you for being on this call today, but we are going to be sharing this video. So I'm going to go a little bit more formal just to make sure we're covering all the key points we want to make sure. So over the past few weeks, I'm sure you have heard about the federal mandate around vaccines immunization requirements. And it is really all about minimizing the risk of COVID-19 transmission in the workplace. The Red Cross is required to implement this mandate. And I'm sure you all have received a couple emails from us about this important topic. So today's call is about sharing information, timelines, and tools that may be helpful to you. More importantly, we want to hear from you, and we're here to answer any of your questions. As our President and CEO, Gail McGovern, shared in her message a few weeks ago, the Red Cross will require COVID-19 vaccinations for all paid staff. The requirement is a little different for volunteers. Volunteers with in-person assignments and activities need to be fully vaccinated against COVID-19 by the end of the year. This requirement does not currently apply to volunteers working fully virtual. So if you're unable or choose not to get vaccinated, we can support you by exploring possible fully virtual volunteer roles. So I want to tell you about our Countdown to Report campaign. So by taking just a few minutes to update your vaccination status and volunteer connection and your supporting documentation, you can help us ensure that we are all ready to engage in in-person activities. This information is truly critical to help us ensure we can continue in our mission and you in your current roles. So we're here for you. We want to support you through this important change. I'd like to introduce Gerald Thomas. He's our COO, who you just heard from. And while Gerald is new to the LA region, he is not new to Red Cross. He has served in leadership roles at the national level with our Service to Armed Forces program, and most recently as a region leader for the North Florida region. So Gerald?
Thank you, Joanne. So for those who I haven't met that may be on the call, I am new to the region. I will definitely physically be in LA in a matter of weeks. The family is super excited for my wife be coming back home, and for my son to be, getting to LA. And so we're excited to be a part of the LA region. Joanne mentioned, some of the tools that we have in place, for staff and for the volunteers and resources that folks can refer to. When we pass this, both slideshow and recording, you'll be able to use these links to reach any of the resources that are available, and all of them have FAQs if there are questions that come up for you later. We're always here to answer any questions for you. Our colleague Jordan is on the line right today, and she'll be able to help out for any questions that I may not be able to answer, going forward, but we're always here to support you through this very fluid event. Okay, so we're going to, just work through the requirement policy just a tad bit, and then we're going to answer some questions if folks have any questions going forward. The questions or opportunities for questions do not end when this session ends. So you can always reach out to us at any time if there's anything that comes up for you later, or you just, kind of want to talk through some things. We can definitely, entertain that, and we're here for you, as we mentioned earlier. At the end, we'll just, ask that everyone use the raise hand function that's in the Teams, up top of your Teams window there, and then we can get to everyone as they throw their hand up. Righty. So, Joanne mentioned, about Gail's message to the entire staff and workforce of the American Red Cross that came out last week. And she announced the vaccination requirement, which requires all staff and volunteers in the Red Cross facilities or operations to be vaccinated for COVID-19, right? The key thing, with this and the why here is that, as a large organization and as an organization that supports the several federal agencies as a contractor, we have a responsibility within that, or requirement within that, to make sure that all of our staff and staff who support those contracts to be vaccinated. So this is a very complex environment that we're operating in. Things are changing quite a bit. We've seen the rates of COVID infections go up, hospitalizations have gone up, and so many of these mandates have come across to make sure that the staff and the workforce are safe, and the people that we support are safe also. So as we're moving through this, any volunteers who participate in in-person assignments will be required to record their vaccination status within Volunteer Connection. And so those in-person assignments, those the frontline work that's being done, whether you're in a Red Cross vehicle, in a Red Cross facility, a mobile or fixed site, attending personal meetings and any recognition events, or as well as working on any response or field assignments, you will need to be vaccinated. So I talked a little bit about the why here. And so as I just mentioned, we have the federal mandate. So where there are federal, state, and local vaccination mandates, they apply to us. And as also mentioned, the Red Cross is a federal contractor, and we are required to ensure that employees, whether they're virtual or in person, comply with the federal vaccination requirements under our covered contracts. So for this particular evolution, testing is not offered as an alternative to the vaccination. This option would make us non-compliant with known federal, state, and local regulations. And those who have been exposed to COVID-19 and have recovered, that does not exempt you from the requirement. And all Red Cross employees, who do not provide verification and will be presumed to be unvaccinated. That includes our volunteers also. So who's impacted? Our Red Cross employees and our volunteers who perform in-person assignments or activities. An accommodation is not going to be put in place for our volunteers. Volunteers who do not report their vaccination status are considered unvaccinated and may be moved over to virtual positions if available. And those are conversations that have to happen between the volunteer and their supervisor. Unvaccinated volunteers may not engage in in-person or with Red Cross staff, clients, or donors, or participate in any in-person meetings, recognition, or training activities, nor can they enter our Red Cross facilities or vehicles for any reason. So medical, as I said before, medical or religious accommodations do not apply to the volunteer workforce. And volunteers in need of an accommodation need to have a conversation with their supervisors so that they can be moved to a virtual position. So here's the timeline. And we talked a little bit about, how fluid this situation is right now. So just in a matter of days, when I created this deck, there was another message that came out that changed the timeline. And so, at the beginning of the week, we were looking at January 1. Now we're looking at January 4th as our effective date, which means that is the date that our workforce has to be fully vaccinated, right? And you'll see the next call out down there is December 6th. So that date is the date that is recommended that you begin your vaccination process, if you have not already done so, in order to meet the January 4th effective date. So if you're fully vaccinated, you're good to go. Nothing changes for you. You're eligible to continue to work and volunteer at the Red Cross. If you are planning to be vaccinated, you need to make sure you start this process no later than December 6th in order to be fully vaccinated by January 4th. Okay, that accounts for the 2 weeks after your last shot if you get a Pfizer or Moderna, which gives you the 4 weeks for the shot process, and then 2 weeks after to be fully vaccinated. If you have only received one vaccination on or before January 4th, then you will not be eligible to work in person as a volunteer. You will need to, if you're in the process, you've had one shot, you'll need to go into a hybrid status. And I'll, call on Jordan to talk a little bit more about the definitions that are coming up next. But you can go into a hybrid status if you are planning, and you will be fully vaccinated at some point, or you can go into a virtual status. And if you have not received your first dose of the vaccination, by the effective date, then again, you need to have a conversation with your supervisor and move over to a virtual status. And finally, if you're not fully vaccinated by February 15th, this is for our paid staff only. They will move into a separate status, and they'll move into a voluntary termination status. So up next are some definitions that I just talked about briefly as I went through that infographic. Fully vaccinated, that is a CDC definition that defines what it means to be fully vaccinated, and that is 2 weeks after receiving the second of a 2-dose vaccine, or 2 weeks after receiving a single dose of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, right? In person, these are positions that require our workforce to be have in-person activities. Whether you perform work in a Red Cross facility, you're going to be in a Red Cross vehicle. Those require qualifications. We must have our workforce to be fully vaccinated and submit their status. So the virtual positions are 100% virtual. That means you volunteer from home using your computer, and 100% of your responsibilities can be done in a virtual setting. We have several virtual positions that are available to volunteers going forward. And then hybrid, if someone is in the process of getting vaccinated, but maybe it got held up for some reason or another, or they intend to get vaccinated, we can put them in a hybrid status when they start working in a virtual sense at the beginning, and then they move over to in-person at a later point. So as we talked about earlier, I mean, this is an ongoing process. It's a very fluid situation. Everything that we discuss here does not end here. So we will be continuing to support our workforce with future town halls. There'll be discussions during office hours for the senior leadership team. There'll also be discussions that will happen through your business units or departments and your supervisors or your leadership. So we want to make sure as we move through this process, our team feels supported and they have the information they need to make the best decisions for themselves. So if anyone has any questions, we'd be glad to do our best to answer them and give you the information you need. Okay, Joanne, anything to close us out?
Thanks, Gerald. So as Gerald said, it's somewhat dynamic. We want to make sure we're sharing this information with as many folks as possible. So the link to this will be available. It'll be a recording and also a transcription if you want to share it with volunteers or other staff members. So thank you all for your attention today. Have a good rest of your day.